once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires we call the internets is Joe Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe? Joe? Hello?
Who's there? Who is this?
It's your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard.
It's 4 PM. What the hell are you doing? Busting into my computer this way.
The NSA said I could.
Well, we don't podcast till early evening. Why are you interrupting my me time? I told you between 4 and 5 is Joey time.
Too bad. We're doing it now.
Well, you got 45 minutes because at 5 o'clock I commence my news nap. That's why I turn on the news and just go to sleep. Although I got to admit the stirring baritones of NBC usually wake me up. Dun, 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 dun. National Geographic would do that too. Dun, 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 dun. Or the Olympics. Dun, dun, dun. Or 2010. Of course, then I'd think, Ric Flair's in the room. Woo!
That's 2001.
No, 2010. There was a movie, you know.
Yes, I know, but they didn't use.
Wasn't very good.
It didn't use "Thus Spake Zarathustra."
See, I knew you'd admit to seeing that piece of shite. See, folks, you gotta be tricky when you're on, Cory. All that it took to get Cory to admit he did try to see the Roy Schneider. Was it Jaws 3?
No, I didn't see Jaws 3, but I did see 2010, and I liked it. It was a direct adaptation of the novel.
What about 2020?
They didn't make a 2020.
I thought that was another book.
No, the next book was 2061.
What?
And the fourth book was 3001.
Ooh. So we could have some sequels.
Well, of course. I'm surprised we haven't, actually.
That still doesn't explain to me why you're busting into my computer at 4 PM.
I'm not going to talk about why I'm here early.
Well, maybe they want to know. It's not like you get 3 days off a week. How did you avoid work today?
I woke up with a migraine. And I had to take some medication that makes it so it's not safe for me to drive. It says right on it, do not drive.
And unlike the other group home, they won't come and get you.
No. Well, no, it's not a group home day. It's a full-time work day. So I actually drove home. If you have migraines, one of the symptoms you have before the pain starts is what they call the halo effect, and it's a section of your vision that kind of you don't see in that. It's just kind of rainbow sparkly. And I've had these migraines since I was, about 14. We thought that they were mostly stress and a food allergy. But I've had them over the last couple of years, and I've stayed away from the food that causes the allergy, so it's probably stress-related. And most migraine medication doesn't work on me, so I have to use a heavy-duty drug that they say don't drive. So I could not drive today, so I stayed home, took my meds, and woke up about between noon and 1. And now I have that weird, it's a feeling I always call a med hangover, where you're just kind of weirded out because you've taken a it's a painkiller. It's codeine and Tylenol. So you're just kind of, everything feels a little unreal. And what better time to record a podcast, don't you think?
Or watch The Pyramid on the Game Network.
Ooh, the Game Show Network.
I don't have it, but I mean, it would be good if I did.
Well, you've got Buzzed. That's the digital channel that shows old game shows. But that's not why we're here.
No, I could be watching it now, but nope.
Nope, we're going to talk about funny books.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the Blowjob Cafe staffed by Sex Robot that's opening in London. Or is that a different podcast?
That's a different podcast.
Oh, different podcast. Sorry.
That's an adult podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I just thought since we get an explicit label, we might as well learn it.
No, that's because a few episodes ago I mentioned that the website Muppet Fucker is owned by Disney. And I'm not going to tell people the reason it happened, but it's a long story. I know. we're going to talk about other things. Joe, you had a topic.
Yep. For sale, parachute, used once, never opened. Anybody interested?
Is that why we're getting together to talk? Was that in a comic, or is that the plot of it? Is that how Uncle Ben died?
No, he got cooked.
Oh.
We could talk about a gingerbread man sits inside a gingerbread house. Is the house made of flesh, or is he made of house? He screams, for he does not know.
Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm doing here is called no-selling. That's when someone tells a joke or does something and you don't react, hoping that eventually the pain will go away. Where are those meds I took earlier today for me?
I think that after all this time, people would know that. Especially since you found out what happened to the crickets. Or at least one of them.
We went on an expedition this week.
We did. We did.
We went to Minnesota's largest candy store. Joe has not been there in, 4 years?
Yep. Since the first time I did, which for those of you who are big into the old, podcasts of Crazy, you could probably go back and find out which one I actually went to and when I did it.
Now, how much bigger is it now than it was when you were there?
I would say about a third, maybe a fourth, because it looks like they pushed out the back wall and just filled it in. And I guess they're not done yet. It sounds like they're going to get bigger and better.
Yeah, it really looked to me like they are getting ready to add on. They have they've plowed a bunch of stuff. They've gotten rid of some of the driveway and not the driveway, the parking space. And, they look like they're getting bigger. But we went on their last day of the season.
Yeah, we're not procrastinators, just poor planners.
Yes. And Joe spent more money than I did, which was pretty odd, because normally I'm the one who's loading up on stuff, but I had already gone a couple weeks ago. I was actually pretty good until I got to the root beer. Oh, yeah, you did Christmas shopping, so we can't talk in detail about what you bought. Not really, although one of the things I did do is, as you probably guess, I'm a big fan of the MASH TV show, and Cory, I made the comment to Cory, I wonder if they have grape knee-high, and on our way out, you spotted it. It was like, they got some, so I picked up a couple bottles, just kind of as a gag/serious gift for my wife and I, and when we first opened it a couple days ago, we were getting ready to watch MASH, and I said, okay, I got something for you, and gave her a sip, and fizzy sugar water, yeah, it's not that great. No, but it was kind of neat that it was an actual. I didn't know if it was a real pop or not, and it still is. So you could go there next year and pick some up if you're so inclined. They had other knee-high stuff, so that was fun. Now, when I was younger, down in Central Illinois, knee-high was the fruit-flavored soda we got. We didn't have Fanta. We had knee-high. We had grape knee-high and orange knee-high, and those were really the only two, grape and orange. I don't even know who bottles it, but that's what we had. And we had RC Cola, which I can't even find anymore. Yeah, that's a tough one. It doesn't work. I know a friend of mine who, name of Dave Dersh, I think he's working with Marvel Universe Live, the touring show now. He's done voiceovers. He was part of a Celtic rock group, Coyote Run. But he was telling me, and this was back college years, so this was probably in the 80s, he had done a commercial for New York Seltzer, which is still around. And they had some there. And they were also he was hoping that the commercial would break out nationwide, because that's where you get the serious residuals. Am I saying that right? Yes. And it didn't, but he was hoping that would happen. And he was explaining to me, and then later on, our good buddy Nick Post, same thing. A lot of times, sodas will have a 6-month shelf life. They'll come out, there'll be a big splash, advertising, and then they cut it all off to see if people are going to keep buying when it's not around, which is why you tend to see the same sodas over and over and over versus whatever did happen to Rondo or OK Soda or whatever other, fast food
type soda snacky things, you know.
Well, we've discussed OK Soda. OK Soda was very regional. They tested it in a few areas, Minnesota being one of them, and it just didn't sell well enough, which is a damn shame.
Isn't that the one that they brought back briefly?
No, they brought back Surge.
Surge, yeah, that was a good example, too. The big thing, it was the thing to drink, and then they cut off all the advertising and it died. We ran across it when we went to the Blue Soda Shop up in Spring Lake Park, which, by the way, has just expanded. They are open over the holidays, so and through Christmas and winter and all that fun stuff. So I imagine we'll be going up there to see what they had. But when we asked them about Rat Bastard Root Beer, they were just like, well, it's tough to get out of Texas. Although you would imagine, you know, what they would order versus a place like the largest candy store would order, they probably get filled a lot faster because you actually got a whole bloody case of it.
Yes, I bought a full case.
And I actually, well, you know, I'm sitting there talking about it, and it's actually right behind me here. But other than the 4 knee high, I got my my Rat Bastard Root Beer, which I will now prominently place on the shelf, so that it's now official. I have the Rat Bastard Root Beer up. Actually, I bought 2 bottles, so I'll put one on the other side as well. And then I also picked up, and this is for gift stuff, they have this Melba Fixings. So I picked up some of the favorite pie flavor of my wife, cherries and cream, Holly, pumpkin pie, and Dana, lemon meringue. She always complains because when we go to that Betty's Pie store, the one up on the North Shore of Minnesota, they're always out of lemon meringue. A few times we've sat down and she's, they got it on the menu. And then, of course, as we're eating our dinner or lunch or whatever, they take it off because they sold out. So when she gets there, she's like, I got to order that right away.
Yes, she does. Pie is important.
I did get me 1 Diet Dad's Root Beer, which I can now drink at any time I want. Whereas the Rat Bastard, I have to be careful because, again, still being diabetic, you got to kind of watch your carb intake.
But that's not the only place we went.
No.
Joe has finally seen the one hot comics he has never been to.
Nope. That was the one in Jordan. And it's right on the main street. It was fairly easy to spot because I got a nice friendly sign up. And I guess it's changed from when it first opened. I was actually expecting more back issues, and they seem to have curved back on those, and they have more new issues. Matter of fact, it reminds me a lot of, at least the one half that's comic orientated, of the way Crazy Comics was. You know, I've got the Walla comics. I had more graphic novels, and then miscellaneous toys. And I had about as many back issues. I think the only one I found of interest was, let's ask Cory. Cory, time to ask the Strohs.
Wow, already?
I know, it just comes out of nowhere. You would think people would send me questions and I could just randomly ask you that or maybe do a full episode of that. But that's neither here nor there. Tell me about Room 222.
Room 222 was a sitcom. Well, not really a sitcom. It was kind of an early attempt at what is now called a dramedy, which is a comedy with drama aspects to it, based in a New York high school. And instead of focusing on the students, it focused more on the teachers. I've only seen stories about it. I've never actually seen an episode of the show.
I think I've seen bits and pieces of it. I mean, it ran, it was ABC, done by Fox, 1969 to 74. And like I said, it was best remembered because it followed the Brady Bunch and Partridge Family and preceded the Odd Couple and Love American Style. So it had like a cherry spot. And guess who did the comic book?
Well, that would be Dell, of course.
Of course, yep. And they did 4 issues. And the one I picked up, number 4, had a really cool photo cover of it, of the main cast. I believe it was Lloyd Hayes, Dennis Nicholas, Michael Constantine, and Karen Valentine. So.
And I wonder, did Karen Valentine do much else after that show?
Well, come to think of it, let's take a look. Let's see. She started as Dream Girl in 1967. Apparently appeared on different broadcasts. She was even on the Dating Game. Let's see. She was nominated for an Emmy in Room 222. She starred in her old series called Karen, which I seem to recall because I had a bit of a crush on her. Played Gidget in the film Gidget Grows Up. Looks like just a bunch of movies, including 70s, like Starsky and Hutch.
Oh, yeah, a lot of TV shows.
Yeah, Sybil, Murder, She Wrote. The last thing, television-wise, or movie-wise, looks like 1995, The Power Within feature film. A lot of made-for-television roles they don't list, and, of course, she is still on stage and probably doing bit parts in television. You know, probably one of those people just pop up and you're like, hey, look, she's here.
But that was your first time in this shop. Now, the other thing about the Hot Comics in Jordan is it's half comic shop, half arcade. And we went there on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh, it was busy.
Was packed with gamers.
And we saw Matt arrive. Some guy comes in and everybody goes, hey, guys, Matt's here. Everybody say hi to Matt. Hi, Matt. Yay, Matt's here. Woo. And you know me, I love a good rhubarb. I jumped in as... Poor Matt's like, oh, God. That's hilarious. I love that stuff. Now, the half...
Now, we had our own people at Hot Comics St. Paul who would do that. Butch, of course.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Who were some of the other guys that we gave the Norm treatment to? And I call it the Norm treatment because on Cheers, Norm would come in and everybody would go, Norm!
I'd have to think on that. I know we'd always yell when Nick showed up.
Yeah.
Of course, he usually had White Castle with him, so there was always a reason for that. Get those smelly things. Well, okay, I'll take one. I do have to say, I'm curious as to where they got their video games, if they rent them.
No, they own them.
Okay, that would be the other question I'd have.
They buy and restore them.
Interesting. Because, I mean, the coolest thing they had was the big 6-person X-Men game. I think we had a 4-person one when Brian and Dan ran Hot Comics that we played one day till the very, very end. That was the one thing I had planned to do in Hot Comics when I went from the 1,000 to 3,300 square foot store, is have video games in the back. But there were a couple problems with it. First of all, no electrical wiring to do it. And the other thing was back then, and they still might have it, St. Paul had a thing where if you had more than 3 video games / pinball, you had to have a certificate. And, of course, that was just another way of taxing you, but it also was a way of keeping video arcades from popping up. Now, you fancy kids with your Xbox and online streaming don't recall, but when Cory and I grew up, you used to have to go to a video arcade, which was just filled with, stand-up video games, the sit-down type. You put the helmet on, pinballs, whatever. They were real hip in the 80s. They kind of died out. And, the closest you could see now is like if you go to a bowling alley, if they're even around anymore where you are, and they might have a whole ton of video games. Most of the time now you plunk in tokens. When we first started, it was quarters. You showed up with a pocket full of quarters and you were ready to go. And then they switched over to tokens because, the tokens never expire, allegedly. So once you spend your $5
until the place goes under.
Yeah, exactly. And Rockefeller tried different things before their last gasp. I mean, they used to have like Monday nights between 6 and 8 or 9. They would set all the games and you'd pay like $10 and could play as many games as you want. Towards the end, they started serving alcohol, which probably really killed them because now the kids couldn't come in. And, they were just dying out. I mean, the games got fancier. That Dragon's Lair game, if you remember that, showed up, which was kind of like a CD-run game that you would actually watch the videos and play along with it. They got bigger games. I remember a Starfleet game where you're actually flying the Enterprise and you sit down in it. They had stand-up ones. So they all started dying out. But now Hot Comics is doing the retro thing where they've got, I saw Pac-Man, I saw Centipede. There was a Star Trek game there that I didn't look at. I didn't actually drop any quarters because I made one tactical error before we went out on our geeking. And Cory informed me that the largest candy store does not take debit cards or credit cards. They do take checks. Unfortunately, I used the last check in my wallet to pay for the, remember last podcast, the truck damage, $500 deductible. So I didn't have a check. And then, of course, when I tried to do my brand new cards on the machine, which I had just changed the PIN codes on, they wouldn't accept it. Fortunately, Cory came through. I did have to PayPal him his money, but he helped me. And the plus side, it did keep me under control when I was going through the candy store. I mean, a diabetic in a candy store is an ugly thing. But like you said, I did escape with some stuff and some gifts, so that was cool. What were we talking about? Oh, hot comics.
Yes.
If you had that store, Cory, what would you do to improve it?
Every time I've gone in, they've been busy. The only thing that I see as an issue is their comics, they've got too many on the shelf, which means they're ordering too many. And I
wonder if they're switching them between the other shops, because you'd think that would be something you'd really want to keep an eye on.
Yes.
I know Uncle Sven's does that. They, I think one of the guys comes every week and he basically strips their small shelving of any back issues that have been there for a while, and I'm talking books that are other than a month. Consequently, Charlie, the guy who's there most of the time, he's over at the mothership bringing books back. He says it's a constant battle back and forth, and they don't get the big variants. They don't get the thing. They're really small shop, but they're
a small neighborhood store.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know how big Jordan is, but it was Sunday afternoon? They had a nice crowd going. They had some games. Everybody was friendly. A guy came up right away and talked to us, said, "Hey, how you doing?" And so that was kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Nobody was playing the video games, though.
They were in the back room where they have consoles and stuff. But I think everybody who was there for, like, Magic and Pokemon and all of those card games.
They even had one of those plastic marble games up where you sit there and you put the marbles down. That was fun.
And you design it and all. But I would really, watching their inventory would be about the only change I would make. It was very much Hot Comics in that they had a lot of toys. Unlike some of the other Hot Comics, they had vintage video games. So if you need your NES cartridges or your Sega Saturn cartridges or some original PlayStation games, they've got all of those as well.
Yep, give them a call. I looked through their graphic novels, and I got to say, they didn't have what I would consider the essential ones. Preacher, I didn't see Sandman. Had a lot of Walking Dead. Didn't have Watchmen, didn't have Marvels, which is what I was looking for. For some reason, I don't have a Marvels graphic novel in my vast repertoire of crap. And Dana doesn't have it, Holly doesn't have it, so I'm like, really? Did I really sell every single copy I had somewhere along the line? Or maybe never, since Crazy Comics never got it again. So, and they had this, small shelving in the back. I don't know what their sales mix is, especially when you compare it to the other Hot Comics where, if they don't have it, they probably just forgot about it and they'll order it for you. It's huge.
I think they don't have a lot of room for graphic novels because their whole graphic novel setup was just a single bookcase in the very, very back of the store. And I would switch that out with the back issues some way because back issues, no one cares.
Most of their back issues were newer issues.
Yeah.
I saw maybe one, X-Men 108. They had an interesting setup with the sets. One of the slide-out boxes they were using, the issues were put segregated. So everything between this part, it wasn't a set. It was a set to sell. They didn't break it up, which I thought was an interesting idea, especially when you have a bigger run and you don't want to break it up, or you want people to be able to at least look at all the issues. But for the most part, I think, back issues should probably not play into them unless you had like a reoccurring theme of the month. Star Wars is coming up, bring some Star Wars back issues. A new Luke Cage if you got any Luke Cage, new Jessica Jones, they're doing a big crossover, the CW, you know, that type of thing. Graphic novels, you probably want to, I don't know, stick with the top 50, if even that. I mean, Walking Dead was a good one. Because there's nothing around that area that you could buy graphic novels with. I don't think there's any bookstore nearby.
No. Jordan is, the best way to put it is about, 20 minutes west of beautiful downtown Chaska.
Or just directly south of Minneapolis.
No, it's to the west.
It's more south than west.
We are considered the southwest suburbs.
You're considered the boonies. Who was I talking with that took offense at that? Was it Lyndon or Morgan?
Yeah, I don't
made some
know.
comment like I was out there. I had to drive all the way out in the boonies, and what are you talking about out in the boonies? We live here. I said, it's not my fault you live in the boonies. I felt like I was having a Deep Space Nine argument, like when Dr. Bashir was saying, I love Frontier Wilderness, and oh, God, I can't think of her name, the Bajoran. Kira took offense. This is my home. This isn't the wilderness frontier.
But as we're talking about graphic novels, you showed me an article a little while back.
Yes, from good old NPR. This was written by Glenn Weldon, and it says, the term graphic novel has had a good run. We don't need it anymore. The whole gist of it is that they called, well, it's more of an interview thing, and they talk about how Representative John Lewis's book, March, Book 3 came out. The final book in their graphic novel trilogy, which I'm a little annoyed at because 2 and 3 were never done as hardcovers. I've got one as a hardcover, and it's really nice, and something I would want to save and read. I really want as a hardcover. So come on, John, pick up the pace here. Anyways, I did see a 3-bound shelf, what do you call it, slipcase format at Source the other day. So Christmas gift, if anybody's listening. So anyways, his whole thing is that he says March, Book 3, and again, this is about the Civil Rights Movement, and Representative John Lewis was intimately involved in it, having had rocks thrown at his head and everything. He's the interviewer's talking to Glenn, and he says, I know you're a graphic novel guy, so it's not a graphic novel. What? That's the second time you called it a graphic novel. Stop calling it a graphic novel. It's not a graphic novel. For one thing, it's nonfiction. All right. Sorry, graphic memoir. See, now graphic memoir is worse. It makes it sound smutty. It's not the diary of Annis Nin, buddy. Sequential art. Spare me. And it goes on and on. And he just does not like the term graphic novels. And his whole gist of the thing is that it's a term that, although what's considered the first graphic novel?
Oh, there's a huge argument.
Well, let's just go with Will Eisner's Contract with God.
Although I would make a much stronger case for Gil Kane's 60s book, Black Mark.
But that didn't really... Were they even... that was a question I was going to ask Joel Thingville next time. What were comic shops like before the direct market? I started thinking about this when I grabbed the Room 222 book. So maybe I'm just going to write that down. It might be an idea for a future podcast. But
the reason Black Mark could be considered that, it was a comic that was sold as a paperback book. So it had much wider distribution than Eisner's book. I mean, it was on newsstands and bookstores and stuff back in the 60s. But the term kind of was used off and on through the 70s. Eisner's the one who kind of put his flag down and said, this is a graphic novel.
And it wasn't
Immediately, Dave Sims said, it's only 48 pages. Novels are longer than that. So through the 70s and 80s, people argued about the term. But once you got to 1986, when you had Mouse, Dark Knight, and Watchmen, the media used it, the bookstores used it, that was the term that was used.
And so, no matter what metric you use, Greg argues that graphic novel doesn't work anymore. Sequential art doesn't work anymore. You should just say it. It's comics, or it's nonfiction, or it's superhero, or it's whatever, you know. So, and I thought that was an interesting point, because the other day I was walking, you know, in between my work assignments, and I was talking with someone, and he looks at the book that I had, and he said, "What kind of book is that?" I said, "Well, it's a graphic novel," and he understood instantly what I was talking about. You know, he didn't deride it, you know, like, "Oh, it's just superheroes." No, he knew it wasn't a prose book. It was, again, sequential art, visual storytelling, a mix between comics and prose, whatever you want to call it. So to me, I don't think the term graphic novel, it defines like a category, but not necessarily a genre, because you can fit a lot of things into a comic format, even though, you know, superheroes seem to be the big thing. But like you said, Mouse, Persepolis, Jimmy Corrigan, and now March, you know, they're just, they're not superheroes. They're not science fiction. They're not, it doesn't mean they're less silly, less meaningful. They're not superheroes. So I think the whole idea that Glenn's working on is that the graphic novel term shouldn't be used, but I don't know if it necessarily helps. Because what would you replace it with? Especially since if people are looking for a graphic novel, say you heard about March Book 3, where would you go look for it?
Now, when you go to Barnes & Noble, all of the comics, graphic novels, whatever, are in the graphic novels section. So that people know, oh, you know, I've heard about this March. Oh, it's a graphic novel. I'll go over to the graphic novel section. What you could do is split them up. Okay, March goes into biography. Saga goes into science fiction. Walking Dead goes into horror. Superhero books you'd have to figure out. Are they going to be science fiction? Probably.
Or maybe give it its own, hey, superheroes. You know, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but is Barnes & Noble going to do that? I think
it's possible.
I think one of the things that we need to quit worrying about is the label. The label is for marketing. And they've spent 30 years now marketing graphic novels. Now you want to change the name of them. Well, that's like saying, oh, okay, I write mystery novels. And then all of a sudden, well, I don't want to call them mystery novels because they're actually police procedurals. Your hardcore mystery people are going to know the difference between, like, you know, what they call a cozy, a noir, and a police procedural. But the 99% of the audience is going to go, I just wanted a thriller, a mystery. It's like when you went to Blockbuster, back when they had Blockbusters. Remember Blockbusters, Joe? Remember? I remember. Oh, I remember.
Yeah, Friday night, we got to go, okay, we got to get him back by Monday. Thank God they got the Dropbox.
But comedy, mystery, drama, people want categories. Because, okay, I'm in the mood for a comedy. I'm in the mood for a mystery. I'm in the mood for a horror movie. I'm in the mood for a science fiction movie. It makes it easier to find things. I've been to bookstores, usually like real small used bookstores where they don't categorize the books. You just have to look through, and you give up. It's like, well, I wanted to read something by Harlan Ellison, and okay. Well, I'm not finding it here. Maybe it's over here. Maybe it's, to hell with it. And Harlan Ellison used to complain that he was put in the science fiction section when, well, this book isn't science fiction, and this book is this, and this book is that. And no, stop it. You're going to be in science fiction. That's what your audience knows you as. Yes, you could break it down. March is a graphic biography, or a comics biography. Saga is science fiction. remember, Dave Sim would complain that, these little books are being called graphic novels. I'm doing a 300-issue series. That's the first graphic novel because it's the size and heft of a real novel.
And Glenn even brings up a Neil Gaiman quote, because Neil Gaiman, is on record as always being amused by the desire on the part of book marketers and award panels to dress up comics in pretentious language, And this is the quote: "I always loved, most of all with doing comics, the fact that I knew that I was in the gutter. I kind of miss that even these days. Whenever people come in and inform me, oh, you do graphic novels. No, I wrote comic books, for heaven's sake. They're creepy, and I was down in the gutter, and you despise me. No, we love you. We want to give you awards. You write graphic novels. We like it here in the gutter."
Well, another thing to remember when Watchmen was nominated for a Hugo, they changed the category so that comic books could never be nominated for a Hugo again.
Was it Watchmen or something Neil did?
Nope, it was Watchmen, because it was, I remember reading about it in the Comics Buyer's Guide. And then Watchmen was nominated for an award as well, and they changed the rules again. And, Sandman was nominated for something. World Fantasy Award. It was a World Fantasy Award.
Sandman was
and
a single issue.
And they changed the rules again.
Yeah.
We don't want you funny book people getting our stuff.
Because the other thing it does is if you lump all the graphic novels together, you run across a problem that I ran into when I had Hot Comics. And this deals with...
Oh, Joe Sosa.
Hey, woohoo! We'll check that out in a bit. The Mask movie came out. It was a comedy with Jim Carrey, and mothers came in to find things mask-related, and, of course, there wasn't anything. And when they pick up the graphic novel, I would actually say, I want you to look at that a little closer because the book is a little more graphic than novel, playing on a word. And they'd look in there, and there'd be, heads blown away, and that big guy who was trying to hunt the mask down, ripping arms off people. And I go, yeah. So what they did is they turned a rather serious story into more of a comedy, which is why I thought I'd point that out. Because you're buying it for your husband or a teenager is probably fine. You're buying it for a kid, probably not.
Probably not the best idea.
Not the best one. There's other things. So even then, if you have, you run the problem with graphic novels of having them. Well, I like going to the source. Okay, I go to the source. I know their graphic novels are A to Z. So if I need to find a Batman graphic novel or March, I'm pretty sure I know where to look. Whereas someone who's not familiar with graphic novels, that's not going to help them all. They would rather, and we talked about that, I think, a couple times at the Big Shop. Do we want to separate these out in genre? I didn't. I had a whole back wall full of graphic novels, and I put them up and I put them on display, and with the flavor of the month was whatever, I'd put that up. One of the things I tried right before I sold the store is you and I had gone to San Diego, and I got a lot of pictures with a lot of creators holding their books. Two reasons, because first of all, a lot of people don't know what the creators look like, and second of all, I thought it'd be cool, like take a photo of Will Eisner holding one of his graphic novels and put all of his graphic novels together and anything else he's working on, or whoever happens to have a new one out, And I still got a lot of the pictures. I didn't obviously use a lot because, by the end of the year I had sold the shop. But other than doing a special thing, A to Z seems to be the way to do it. Whereas if you have a big bookstore, like you said, this is autobiographical, put it in with, I would even say history. If you have a civil rights section or current events, that's the type of placement where you'd want to put, I don't know, any graphic novel that might work. Sure, you can have a display up front of Star Wars stuff or Doctor Who, which they love to do. But to take a book like March, it could fit not only in graphic novel or, in the history section. Especially, if you come up and you go, well, they have one advantage that, the source has that too. You walk up and you talk to the salesperson. Could you get me that graphic novel, March book 3? Okay, let's go over the graphic novels versus, I heard John Lewis has a new book out. Oh yeah, that's March. That's over in the history section. Barnes & Noble can look it up on their computer. The source, well, they just know where their stuff is. So just find anybody there and they'll help you.
And I've been to shops where they've got, well, if you go to the source, the old version of the source, they had one wall that was all the manga. There you go. There's all the manga. And then here is all the oversized stuff. Here are the regular, your run-of-the-mill superhero stuff. And then over here, they had the more adult stuff. And I think one of the things you got into with the people at your shop who worked there, not the customers, was they kept wanting to put it in order of company. And you said, no, they're to be alphabetical. And I've been to some shops where they try very hard to put them in order of creator. Like, you go to a bookstore, everything's, all the Stephen King books are together. It's not by the title of the Stephen King book. It's here's Stephen King, here's Anne Rice, here's Andrew Vachas, But it's hard to do with comics because are you going to go by the writer, by the artist, by the character? Do you want all the Superman together? Do you want all the Mark Waid together? Do you want all the Alex Ross together? Do you want all of the Greg Capullo together? How?
Well, that's the thing. If you're a big comic shop, you could probably do that as well as have, I got one copy with Alan Moore's section, and then I have the other ones in W. That's kind of what I was leaning at with what I did with the pictures. I wanted to kind of make a kiosk. Okay, well, Alan Moore's in the news. Let's make a kiosk of, or the wall display of Alan Moore stuff. Here's Watchmen. Here's whatever, all the other things he did. If Entertainment Weekly had a write-up of, I don't know, say the Big Bigfoot book by Mojo Press. Okay, here's the article. Here's the book. Maybe 2 and 2 will click and you'll pick it up somehow. Generally, I found the best way comics sold is, like I said, you had them all laid out alphabetically. We clearly marked what was new. I actually marked what was next week. The one thing I know Mike and Christy wanted to do, they wanted to have a section like, these are new comics for the week. And I see that at the source. I see that at other shops. And while that's easy to do, I also find what happens is you tend to ignore the other 80% of the comic layout because you're just concentrating on what's new this week. And yeah, I see people walk up and down the source, but the real battle is when you get there right away, the new comics, because that's what you're looking for. You're trying to flip and get the variant you want, or, don't want this book, I want this book, And usually if I end up getting to the source right away when they're open at 10, I just wander the older books because nobody's there. And then eventually this group will break off and head to the register or head wherever they go. I mean, the source is a big store. So part of me saw, for a customer, that's a nice, easy thing to do. But as a retailer, I thought that doesn't really work well because I would rather you wander the shelf and maybe, just maybe, you might see something by the cover and pick it up and go, oh, well, I missed this. I should have picked it up. Not to say that we didn't put like comics together. We put the Superman together. We put the Spider-Man together. You had Adventures of Superman, Superman, Action, Man of Steel, boom. All your Superman are here. All your X-Men are here. If there was a crossover, we put those together. And then I monitored it too, because just because the book Justice League went into Green Lantern doesn't mean Green Lantern people will follow it. So you had to have the books Green Lantern next to Justice League as well as Green Lantern in its own spot, and maybe Justice League over there. But if you sold out of Green Lantern and you have a pile by Justice League, well, better put it back. That type of stuff. Just monitor how things are going. And I think with a lot of these stores now, they don't do that. Or it's just too much of an undertaking. I don't see people necessarily wandering, following, like the source, for example. I don't know if they have somebody monitoring their comics the way I did. I know Nick would talk to me about times where people would get frustrated because they're like, I don't get it. Last issue of Batman sold 100 copies. This month sold 50. why are we still ordering 100? And Nick's like, I don't know. It could have been a crossover. It could have been a weird issue. You know, unless like the one time in Crazy Comics where Rob Liefeld do 2 issues and nobody wanted it and they put them back on the shelf, which was fine. You know.
Wow. Sorry. It feels weird when you go, oh, they put it back on the shelf and that's fine. When you were, one of the reasons you got your name was because if someone put a book back, you're taking food out of the mouths of my children.
Yep. You gotta be careful. Because, I mean, I looked at, when I first started, we were hardcore about that because it'd be like, it wasn't that you were putting a book back. It's just 9 times out of 10, that person would not take it off their pull list. And then I not only had that one there, which usually wound its way on the shelf after everybody come through, so now I'm stuck with it, but I got 2 more issues coming in that you didn't drop. And so I really wanted people just to stay on top of this the way I stayed on top of it. I mean, I just described for 15 minutes what I did on the shelf to try to make sure the books were there that people did. That doesn't even count the time I would spend with the computer and with people's previews making sure everybody got what they got. And I know I wasn't 100%. I mean, there's a couple customers when we tried to get Crazy Comics going, and we said, hey, we're doing it again. Well, you guys didn't really pull accurate for me. I said, what? You never told me. Well, I tell Mike. And, you know, so, there was always problems with it. I remember the one guy we got that DOS comic program from was a friend of Brian's down in Florida, and he got his comics on Thursday, and you couldn't pick them up till 4 o'clock Friday. He had over 800 subscribers that he pulled for. And he might have been able to get away with that because I think he might have been the only comic shop in that area. But
if you got 800 subscribers, you're doing okay.
Yeah, and if you knew that, that was cool.
Well, and if he said, comics are available Friday at 4.
You know, and now it's a different thing because everybody gets their comics Tuesdays for sale on Wednesday. So you go in Tuesday, Source's already got the wall clear. They've moved all the books down. I mean, it was a different thing then. I got my books at 8 p.m., opening at 11 for people who are there at 11:01 to get their comics. You know, so we were always
8 a.m. 8 a.m.
Oh, yeah. And the Source
You said 8 p.m. 8 p.m. would have been nice because then it was like, okay, comics will be up tomorrow. But
no,
the other thing that happened in the Twin Cities was there was a race to see who would get their comics on the shelf first.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was at Shinder's got their stuff Friday morning. They probably got it Thursday night, but they'd get it out to the stores Friday, and it would be with the regular daily delivery from downtown. So sometimes we'd have the comics at, we open at 9. Sometimes we'd have them at 9:30. Sometimes we wouldn't get them till 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And I know we lost tons of sales from people who, at the College of Comic Book Knowledge, they have all theirs, they have the stuff Thursday night. I could buy the comics Thursday night. And I didn't care if people went somewhere else. Shinder's was the worst place to buy comics. But still, you're losing sales, and shops were kind of fighting over who would have their books first on the shelf. Matter of fact, I remember like 88, 89, 90, they would actually advertise, we have our comics on the shelves before anybody else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got to the point where I remember when we used to have them freighted in by Northwest, and we'd be out at Northwest at midnight, and the odd thing was there were a lot of people out there at midnight. But people don't realize a lot of cargo planes land after all the commercial jets are gone. And so we'd be waiting, and they'd say, okay, we'll have it out by door 5, and we'll wait for door 5. And then for a while we switched to, I think it was American Airlines, and then I think we quit with them because one day our orders got bumped because they had to send 500 employee manuals to Minneapolis. And when we talked to the guy, he goes, I don't know what the hell they're doing. We only got 15 employees here. So I was like, oh, obviously our business doesn't mean that much to them. So we went back to Northwest. Eventually, like I said, for a while when I had a decent UPS guy, and when he would show up at 9, we'd be his first stop. So we'd help him unload. And then we'd always tell when he wasn't on the route, because then we don't know where the comics would go. And really, they don't have to deliver them until 8 p.m. that night, or I think it's 5 for UPS. So then we got to, we're going to go pick them up, which for the normal UPS guy, he didn't mind because his back was hurting him anyways. But then, we'd get there at 8 o'clock, ready to pick up, to find out, the source already came through at 7:30. Oh, so we show up at 7:30, and there's the source, but then UPS, we let them in because they have such a big order, and, when they're out of the way, we can get everybody else's. And we're like, well, yeah, that went over like we didn't like that. So,
that went over like a lead balloon.
So we really, it got crazy, some of the stuff we would do. And, at the beginning, we picked up our stuff at the Cap City warehouse, which was easy because everybody got their stuff at the Cap City warehouse. On the few days it was late, you picked it up the following morning. I remember one afternoon, we got there at 4. I picked up my stuff, and I busted my ass to get it picked up, and I don't remember if I cut a check then or if I mailed it or brought it later. And I jumped in my car, had the truck full. I drove away just as a rainstorm hit because I knew it was going to rain. And so all those guys had a choice: sit and wait for the rain to stop or load everything. And remember, we're talking paper product and cardboard. So I felt kind of cocky about that, pulling away as the storm hit. But yeah, it got crazy, and whenever I get my Solo Joe done, you'll hear the Pat talks about some of the stories when we I'd pick him up at like 6 a.m. and we'd run over to Cap City and pick up our comics, and then I'd go drop him off at work, or he'd come with me and pull comics till it was time for him to go to work. So yeah, it just changed. But as soon as Cap City closed, the biggest thing that hit was now we had shipping charges. So right away our profits dropped because our costs went up, because Diamond never had a warehouse in our town because Schindler's would never agree to buy comics from Diamond. And then by the time they did, it was Cap City was gone, or they had their weak line of comics. They didn't have Marvel, didn't have DC, didn't have Image. So, I bought what I could through Cap, but I had to buy everything else through Diamond. And then it was just a matter, Cap had to close the warehouses. Everybody was getting it shipped to. And then that's when the weird shipping stuff came. But the one thing I do know is that most of the comic stores, except Schindler's, had their books on the shelf, by noon, if not earlier. Schindler's would usually get theirs by 4 o'clock, which was kind of cool because if we were, being sneaky, if we knew a book was sold out and going to go crazy on the back issue market, we'd run up to Schindler's and buy their copies.
Because you're terrible people.
We were. We would go to Borders. And what was the big chain? It was like the little bookstore that was shoved in a regular Walden Books. We go to Walden Books. They had comics, so we knew which hot ones to get. Nick actually got newsstand delivery for a while, and I think Tim did in Granite City. And the one advantage they had is they had to carry all these magazines, but then they could also call and say, hey, that Black Panther #1, I'll take any issues you got, and they won't come back. Sure, give them to you and screw everybody else. They didn't care.
Yeah.
So to round up the subject, would you still call them graphic novels, or should we expand that?
I'm going to call them graphic novels just because it's easy shorthand. It's kind of like how comic fans will refer to everything as a trade paperback, even a hardcover.
Yeah. Or that's something on eBay, too. It's like when I'm listing a ton of graphic novels, like I just did, SC or GN or HC. Do people look for books in these terms, or are they looking for Bigfoot? And then they'll find every Bigfoot graphic novel, including the Bigfoot book by Mojo Press. Which, by the way, I have a copy of, and if anybody wants it, first person to email Cory, I'll mail it to you free.
Oh.
It's like $2-3 on eBay, but I must have bought it just because little Mike liked Bigfoot, and I know he must have a copy of it, but I was just, eBaying it the other day. I'm like, this isn't even worth the time it took to scan it. So anybody wants it, it's yours. You know what to do, because you'll have to listen to These guys, our sponsors.
Yes, here at Solitaire Rose Networks, we have ads. That's right, we have ads. Just like every other podcast. Come on, it's okay. Our first advertiser is our longest-running advertiser, and that's DreamHost.com. DreamHost.com is the best, bar none, web host all over the interwebs. You could go to other web hosts. You could go to the ones that have big ads on TV and everything, and they're not going to give you the service, the dependability, and the reliability of DreamHost. Head on over to DreamHost.com. Use the code CRAYZ, K-R-A-Y-Z, and get $20 off your first year of web hosting. Another of our sponsors is Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club has great blades at low prices, and let's face it, you got to shave. Head over to shaved.by/C19DC. Get you some blades. They're wonderful. I use them. I use all of our sponsors. Matter of fact, head on over to crazycomics.com. Over on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see all of our sponsors. Bombas, Grays, Flaviar, Dollar Shave Club, and DreamHost. If you would like to advertise on any of the podcasts in the Solitaire Rose Network, you can. Just email solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, subject advertising. Wow.
I know, see, I'm learning.
I can't believe that you're the one who jumped in on that.
Well, I did because we're already 10 minutes into my news nap, and I still know we got to talk about my eBaying.
Yeah. But you're even introducing that.
I know.
I don't even need to be here, do I?
Well, you got to stop the recording eventually.
Eventually, I suppose. But, whatever. That's fine. I know I'm not needed. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we've already talked about Room 222, and as I'm wont to do, I bought it one day, put it on eBay the next. So I don't know why I do that. I have a sucker for photo covers and Dell in particular, but I did sell it. But I did put a ton of graphic novels on. Most of them, like I'm wont to do, as I make sure I have the lowest price available, and a lot of times free shipping. And of course, if you tell me you're one of our esteemed listeners, I'll throw in something from my vast accumulation of crap. Not the big Bigfoot book from Mojo Press, because I've already promised that to somebody else. But if nobody does want that, and next week it's still sitting on my pile, it could be yours. I've got a bunch of other comic books, and what I did is, I'll talk about a little bit in geeking, but let me see if I can find this one. I got this pile here. Let's see. Oops. Oh, there we go. No, I don't think so. Let's see. Is it in here? Nope, not in here. Okay. Actually, what I'm doing is, since I can't find it, I'm just going to look for it on my favorite website, Atomic Avenue here. So let's see. Oh, here it is. Cory, a second. Ask the Strode.
Oh, I'm needed on this episode? Okay.
You may be, because, Cory, tell me about the Allagash incident.
I don't know about the Allagash incident.
It's one of the best documented UFO abduction case on record.
Oh, is that the one that was the black gentleman and his white wife, and the aliens were confused as to their skin tone and everything?
It might be. It's hard to tell, because I'm talking mostly about the black and white comic from Tundra. Let's see, when was this bad boy made? 1993.
Because I remember there was back in the 70s when there was the big UFO hubbub. By the way, now that everybody has a camera on them all the time, you don't hear jack about UFOs anymore, I've noticed. But there was this big deal, and the story was about the aliens picking up a man and his wife in a northern state, and they tested them and did all these things and were very confused by them. And the kicker at the end of the story was because the husband was black and the wife was white.
Yeah.
And my whole thought process, I don't know, I was like 12, 13 when I heard about this. It's like, why would aliens give a damn about that?
Well, this one's a different one, from Charles Rack and Jack Weiner, and apparently this one happened where they were abducted during a canoe trip, and the the comic talks about what happened aboard the ship. The reason I bring it up, because if you got a copy of it, and this one, as I said, was from Tundra, it's going for about $50 right now.
That's not bad.
Well,
probably only sold about 50 of them back then.
Compare it to the 2 copies I've got of the NFL Super Pro.
NFL Super
Bowl special, and the #1, which guest stars Spider-Man. And they're really, I should have just left these in the quarter box, but.
And somebody recently asked, hey, Marvel's bringing back all these weird, obscure characters. Are they bringing back NFL Super Pro? And it was answered with, well, the NFL owns half of it, so no.
I wonder if, we talked a lot about the giveaway books last podcast. And, of course, I got a whole slew of them I'm putting on eBay probably later tonight after this podcast here is done and I wake up from my news nap. Now, 14 minutes into it. Not that I'm counting. I just wonder, you think there's any interest in like a reprint of that stuff? Because it was hard to find. Sometimes when it wasn't overtly, yes, this is Dingo shoes for sex education. Or would anybody care to see a reprint like that? I started thinking about that when we talked about those little gumball-sized comics that they did back in 68 or 67. And I never knew they existed. Now they're like $50 a piece if you can even find them, $300 as a set. But they're supposedly got original stuff in it. Or maybe they just reprinted very small Jack Kirby work, which would be really, really weird to look at unless you got a microscope. But you think there's any interest in stuff like that? Do we really want to see Magneto fight Acme with the power of Stridex?
I don't think that anyone cares, really.
I just wondered, because they did that
rights
Hembeck.
Would be messy.
Yeah, it could be. And they did that Hembeck book, where they did the not... Image did the one of all of his other stuff. Marvel just did one of their stuff. I think DC is yet to do the ones he did for the Daily Planet stuff. I'm just curious. I mean, not curious enough to buy a set of these gumball comics for, $300. Not with my car bills. So, anyways, as I said, every Monday I try to put new stuff up so you guys have first crack at it. KRAYZ on eBay. Send me a quick note via the eBay system, seems to be the best, or my email, and you can, like I said, I'll give you something. I got tons of stuff, and I keep getting more. It's
better in your garage than Joe's.
Well, it's all in my basement, but
better in your basement than
I'll
Joe's.
get to the garage stuff eventually. And now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is Cory's favorite part of the show, freaking and geeking.
Well, no, my favorite part of the show is when I get to take a nap. But I like freaking and geeking, too. Joe, what are you freaking on?
I'm on Facebook.
Well, yes, you are.
And
a lot.
And so are a lot of creators.
Yes, they are.
And I've just noticed this weird phenomena happening. And it could be because of the election, or it just could be because you're only allowed 5,000 friends, and I'm pretty sure some of these creators have more than 5,000 friends. But I've seen more and more creators. Eventually I stop and I go, hey, I haven't seen this guy's feed for a while or gal, because, Facebook does their weird algorithm or whatever. And I go to find out that they defriended me, which is fine, I guess. If it's not somebody I know personally, I'm not really that offended by it. But then some of the creators have their, what would you call it, like a professional page.
Yeah.
Which is a good solution, especially if you've got more friends than, and a lot of these are fans. They're not really close friends. But then some of these creators, they're just not updating their feed. I used to watch Bill Tushy's site all the time, and it was fun because he had really good arguments, more of on the right-wing side of things than I am, and that's why I think maybe I got defriended. There's been a few times, I've added to the discussion, especially when he's talking about, his creation She. Because one of my favorite stories is how we were one of the few comic shops in town that had them because I saw people ordering them through Advanced Comics. So I said, well, let's order a bunch. And he always talks about the cons he's going to, when they're going to have unique comic books or unique figurines. I mean, and these ain't toys. These are like $200-$300 pieces. And when I go to his fan page, it's never updated. It's like the last entry I saw was for last August, and he's done things since then. A couple other creators, same thing. You know, they drop you from their personal page, but they never update their professional page. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think of like George Perez. He almost puts the same thing on both pages. Tony Isabella, another guy who's always updating his stuff. And so if you are a creator and you find yourself the urge to do that or the need to do it, more likely, don't forget us guys who you're not friending or defriending, because we friended you for a reason, because we want to follow you. We like you professionally and maybe someday meet you professionally and, God forbid, actually become your friend.
And buy stuff.
Absolutely. The other thing I'm freaking on, and I don't really talk much about this, but, I think most of our listeners know I have rheumatoid arthritis. It's just been kicking my ass the last couple of weeks. I don't know what it is. You have what they call these flare-ups. Rheumatoid arthritis is just your body's attacking your joints, and you feel arthritic. The only way you can stop it is by repressing your immune system, which during the cold and flu season is really a dumb idea, but it's something you just got to do. Eventually, your system could be stress, could be that dicey-looking breakfast burrito you ate. You don't know. It just flares up. My joints have been so achy. It's just hard to move. It's hard to get up. I mean, I'm in bed. I just want to stay in bed. I can't tell you what it did to my diabetic numbers. I mean, doctor's on my case. You really got to start moving, but it hurts. So it's just been tough the last couple of weeks, and I don't know. Maybe I'm over stressing the election. Just it could be the weather too. I mean, even when we went out geeking the other day, just cold, depressing. It's gotten damp. Even now it's kind of drizzly rain, just not feeling good. So it's hard. It freaks me out. And then I talked to a couple other people I know that have it, and they're feeling the same. And I think Cory can attest to when you got something inside you, whether it's mental or physical hurt, you feel like you're alone. You feel like you're the only person doing it. And I don't want to say it was nice, because I feel bad for other people that have RA, but it was nice to be able to talk to other people and realize, hey, I'm not the only one going through it. And it gets me off my ass and put things on eBay. So it's a win-win.
I think one of the things about any sort of issue you have
hidden
with
disabilities.
Yeah, but even ones that are out there that you can see is when you can talk about it openly and share how you feel about it. One of the things I've been doing since I completed my therapeutic classes is talking much more openly about the anxiety I feel and how I've felt it for a long time. And there are times when I can handle it and times when I can't. I can point to times when my marriage fell apart and I was fighting for custody of my son. I was anxious all the time. Every day felt like a crisis was happening all the time. Those of you who listened to the show for a long time, when I had the job that I had to leave, my last 3 months there, I felt like I was having heart palpitations the entire time I was at work. Every time the little email notification would come up, you would get that feeling of, oh crap, because so many of the emails had been, one of your people has messed up and you needed to prevent this from happening. And so, and in doing that, more and more people have said, yeah, I've felt anxiety, I've felt this, I've dealt with this. And I think we get this feeling that because we don't know other people who have whatever, that, well, there's something wrong with us. And I think it's more, human beings, there are a lot of us out there, and I'm going to get real scientific here. It's really recently that human beings have lived to be more than, what the average age was in the mid-30s up until the mid-20th century. So we're dealing with the fact that our bodies aren't made for the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just end my freaking quoting the wise poet Mick Jagger, what a drag it is getting old. Cory, what are you freaking on?
The first piece of news that's kind of freaking me out, but there's a silver lining to it. Amazon announced a while back that they were putting together a Buckaroo Banzai TV series with Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith was pushing it. He was real excited about it. And then last week, the two creators of Buckaroo Banzai, the two people who worked on the screenplay for the original 1984 movie, have said, hey, wait a minute. This was not work for hire. We brought this to you. We have ownership of it. And Kevin Smith said, well, I'm not going to be involved. If the creators aren't involved, I'm not going to be involved. Which I'm freaking because I wanted to see. Kevin Smith hasn't really done anything except his podcast and his reality shows for a while. He's, I'm writing Clerks 3. I'm writing Mallrats 2. There's going to be this TV series. And nothing's coming out. So I was excited about it, a huge Buckaroo Banzai fan. But the fact that he said that, well, if the creators aren't happy with it and the creators aren't involved and the creators aren't getting anything from it, I don't want to be involved. I like that. I think that's a pretty cool stand for a creator to take, to say, well, if you're not going to honor the people who created it, if you're going to try and rip them off, I'm not going to add to them being ripped off. So that's pretty cool. I was looking through my order at DCB Service. There's the Essential Kurtzman, Volume 2. The first one was a reprint of The Jungle Book, which was a book that he put together after he left MAD and after he left Trump and before he started Help for Ballantine Books. That was the first one. Second one was going to be a reprinting of Trump, which was a magazine he did right after he left MAD. Hugh Hefner hired him away and said, I've got all this Playboy money. I love your work. Make me a magazine. I've never seen it. I've only heard about it. Dark Horse announced, well, it was announced back in like the early 2000s that they were going to be reprinting it. And then that never happened. And then a year and a half ago, they had it in previews. Still not out. Every time I go to Amazon, it's like, it's coming out in a month.
It'll be here soon.
So now the date that it's supposed to be shipped is sometime in sometime in December. Not hearing anything from Dark Horse about it. And all I can say is, this is a reprint, okay? It's not like you're waiting on the creator to get the stuff done. Pretty much everybody who has work in the book is dead. Just reprint the damn thing.
You mean they're not going to get better?
No, not only are they not going to get better, we're not going to get any new work out of them.
Are you sure they're not just sitting in the grave with an eraser, wiping out their stuff? Decomposing?
No, that was Beethoven.
Oh, okay.
I know that, Joe.
Dun, 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 dun.
Joe, what are you geeking on? What are you loving?
Got my truck back.
Yay!
And the bumper looks good and the wheel works, and it only cost me $500. And I do got to relate this story. Holly, when I get really lazy, as I'm wont to do, I let Holly drive. And she'll drive herself to school, drive herself to work. Last night, she got pulled over for the first time.
Uh-oh.
Apparently,
What'd she do?
She could not, near as I could tell, she misread how to turn the headlights on. She had the fog lights on, but not the headlights. And the place in town she goes through, Maplewood, are notorious because they're very bored. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it. Even I got pulled over once. They're usually pretty good about it. I mean, when I got pulled over, ironically, Holly was in the car. I was driving my wife's PT Cruiser. Pulled out of the mall, got pulled over a couple blocks later, and I go, do you know any reason why your headlights aren't on? And I turn them on and go, oh, crap. My bad. My car has automatic headlights. I'm driving my wife's car. I didn't know it. So they're going to run your stuff just to make sure you don't have any warrants, because that's how they pick up 90% of the guys that have warrants on them. Because if you don't care about other laws, traffic laws are like not even an afterthought. So she was a little shook up when we tried to reassure her, and we spent all night telling stories about the times we had been pulled over. Never gotten a ticket, although my wife does. That's what you get for speed racing a female officer. And, of course, she was upset because then she couldn't use her female willies to charm her way out of it. I'm telling you, Them women's, they got willies.
I'm not touching that at all.
That was Grumpy from Snow White. You can touch it all you want.
I'm not talking about touching somebody's willy.
The only, this for the guy who worries about his gob on his giant-sized man thing. The only other thing I picked up from Hot Comics...
People love my giant-sized man thing.
Not with a gob all over it. I finally found a copy of Spawn 265, which starts a crossover into a Savage Dragon and back. And these were the times, I believe, when Eric Larson, I think Todd was writing it, and... Well, I guess they share it. Todd and Eric were doing plots, scripts, layouts, pencils, and inks together. So the interesting thing is that the character Ant was bought from the original creator by Eric Larson. And this is kind of her re-debut into the universe. And it goes from Spawn into Savage Dragon and then back to Spawn. So if you are big on crossovers, this is one that happened. You probably want to, I think 265 isn't necessarily with Savage Dragon, but the story continues into the next issues, and it's the first appearance of Eric Larson owning Ant. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The basement, as I once talked about, is now set up the way I need it. We've got shelving units that go about waist high. I've got all but 6 of my back issue boxes on it, so I can pretty much get to all my back issues, go through them, and look for them. And I did find my Glamour Puss. So I will be getting a hold of the person who asked about him momentarily to see which issues he's looking for. A problem is that I think he wants the later issues, and I think I stopped about 18 or 19. So sometimes the systems work. The goal now is, like I said, I've got about 50 comics sitting next to me that are going on eBay. The ones that don't really have a value, I'll probably bring to FallCon next year. But of course, we got to remember there's SpringCon coming up. NSP SpringCon 2007, which will be May 20th and 21st at the Minnesota State Fair Grandstand. Still a month away, but tickets will be on sale, the advanced tickets, at www.mcbacomiccons.com. So the Odin Sleep continues, and they'll start winding it up right after Christmas. As I did have a bit of downtime because I just wasn't moving, I did start trying to clear off my DVR. I cleared off 3 episodes of The Big Bang Theory up to date. Coming into the last seasons, I guess, of reading articles that they just don't want to go on. Apparently $1 million an episode is too much or not enough or something. I don't sweat the stars, their money that they make up front, because this sucker is going to be in syndication forever. Our kids will be podcasting. Can you believe that oldie Big Bang Theory's on MeTV now? I did catch up.
Joe, I have told this story a couple of times. I don't know if I've told it on the podcast. What is the number 1 sitcom on cable TV right now?
For a while, I would have said Friends, but I don't know.
It is Friends.
It is?
Friends gets the highest ratings, and the first episode of Friends was 20 years ago.
Yeah. I know for a while I would have said Cosby Show, but I think that's kind of fallen out of favor with his stuff.
Yeah, they're not showing it anymore. But no, Friends. Seinfeld went off the air almost 20 years ago, and it still does very, very well. Sitcoms, one of the reasons why they throw so many sitcoms is if you get a sitcom that hits, it'll make money forever and ever and ever. But some of the ones they thought would do well aren't. Like Modern Family is not doing well at all in syndication. What's the other one that they just recently... Well, I know that the Candice Bergen one, where she was a newscaster.
Oh,
that one,
Murphy Brown.
Yeah, that one did terrible in syndication. So even with that, it can go for 7-8 years. Drew Carey. I love the Drew Carey show. It's not being syndicated anywhere.
I got to tell you, Cory, I'm going to go off into a different geeking. I'll get back to my TV watching. Have you heard of the D-List?
Is that the Kathy Griffin thing?
No. This actually that's right. I forgot about that. No, this is a guy. His name is Dave, hence the name D-List, and he has his own thing on GeekVision.tv, and he releases stuff on YouTube. Go look up the top 11 unreleased Weird Al songs, and you will see his unreleased parody of Home Improvement. And the reason I mention it is because when you hear the little snippet I will sing for you, you will understand why the guys from Home Improvement decided not to use it. I'll repair for you.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that.
Nope. But it's funny, and it also covers all the other songs and things. And Weird Al, all this stuff exists through the courtesy of bootleg recordings. So if you go to Geek Vision TV or just type in top 11 unreleased Weird Al songs, you can go see all 11, including the, he thought that was the joke. And the guys who did Home Improvement liked it too, but they thought, I don't think ABC would do that. And they were right. Anyways, other TV shows I caught up with, I sat and watched 5 episodes of Lucifer. What's nice about these is, of course, you flip through the commercials. What wasn't nice about it is I had some of the art. I had 6 episodes, and one of them I missed because apparently I had the TiVo set up to record 6, and there was a 7th one that something key happened that affected the whole show. They do good recapping, but I wish I'd have had it. That's what. I don't even know if they're going to rerun a show like this or just throw it on Netflix somewhere. But the one thing that was kind of a negative is they were still running political ads at 6 shows ago. Fortunately, I got to skip through them. So, and I enjoy the show. The actor is so wonderful. All the characters are showing they're outside the norm that they had. Like you said, to make the characters interesting, you got to really put them through their paces. So you're getting to see the actors pull off different things. And of course, it's ended in a mid-season break, and the cliffhanger is like, so you're got to wait till January now. I've also been watching reruns of Star Trek Enterprise. I think that show is kind of underrated, really, because God, I'm actually there. It's kind of sad knowing there's not going to be any more of that, because they were doing some wonderful stuff. I got to admit, I didn't watch it when it came out. I mean, I watched episodes here and there. And I think it was just I was Star Trek'd out, by the time that show hit.
And the first season was god-awful.
Yeah. Even I think I flipped through. I watched the first episode. And actually, I enjoyed it. I didn't get any farther into it. And then I watched the one with the Borg, of course, which was their attempt to kind of, which actually brings, again, they bring back geek questions that we'll never get answers to unless they do it in the book. And of course, they had the whole 3rd season where the Zinti attack Earth, put a 4,000 kilometer mile scar through a probe and end up killing over 7 million people, including people that had relatives on the Enterprise. And, I talked about it before because I watched the whole thing when I was on, was I in Vegas at the time? It's just one of the deployments back on when I was with TSA. And I know the next season, had they done a 5th season, would have been more into the Romulan War. And I've talked about the Discovery Star Trek coming up that I just, again, I'll wait and see. If they're going to put it on paper, CBS, I won't be watching it until it shows up on Netflix. So, but yeah, if you're a Star Trek fan, you might want to go back and check it out. It had potential, but it's not going to happen anymore because I think everybody's moved on. I haven't read a lot because, just did a lot of holiday stuff, and I did finish Bloom County Book 4. That's where he ended Bloom County. A couple months later, he went into the Outland strip, and I've got that book as well lined up to be read. If you read it, they talk a bit about why he wanted to get more into the Sunday strip. And I love the annotation notes because a lot of times he's talking about what his kids think when they saw this strip, or, you could erase this name, put this name in, it still works. He talks a little bit about just the frustration of getting out the strip. And, he did a lot of things that probably couldn't get done today in comic strips. So, which is probably why he's online. That's all I'm geeking on. Corey, what you geeking on?
But the first thing, a while back I said I was going to start reading a bunch of #1 issues. I read a bunch of #1 issues, so I got 4 of them I'm going to talk about.
Cool.
The first one is Thanos, getting his own series again.
Did you get your box day?
No, these are other books.
Oh, I didn't get Thanos one yet.
Thanos #1 is the second Thanos series. The first actually kicked off the Annihilation storyline, except you didn't know it at the time. I think the first 6 issues were by Starlin. The next 6 issues were by Keith Giffen. This is done by Jeff Lemire and Mike Deodato. And really a solid first issue. Thanos comes to his throne world to take back power, but we also see the forces that are starting to gather against him. Whenever I think Mike Deodato, I think of a lot of his 90s work, which I didn't care for at all. It was very much the 90s sort of art. But when I read his stuff at Marvel, it's much, much, much better. It's better designed. The characters look more realistic. You look at his 90s stuff, and all the women have legs that are 9 feet long, and bodies all out of proportion. But his work on Thanos was really solid, and Jeff Lemire's story, it's hard for other people to write Thanos because Jim Starlin imbued that character with so much of himself. So when you read a story with Thanos not by Starlin, the first thing you kind of do is kind of shake your head and go, it doesn't seem right. I never did that during this. Really good first issue. The next first issue I read was Avengers 1.1 by Mark Waid and Barry Kitson. It is set during Avengers number 16, which is the issue where the Avengers quit and Cap puts together the new team, the kooky quartet of him, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. And this sort of hashes that story out and expands it. I like Mark Waid. I think he's got a great handle on the characters. I love Barry Kitson's art. But as I'm reading this, it really... And I'm as big into nostalgia as the next guy, but it's like, do we really need to go back to the early Silver Age of Marvel again? I'm so tired of... I'm tired of this sort of thing. Where it's, we're going to fill in the gaps in these stories that were published 50 years ago. Ugh. No. Tell new stuff.
Gaps are good.
Yeah. But it just... I read it, and it was like, okay, that was fine for what it was. And they're doing at least 4 issues, and I just keep thinking, why are they doing this? It only appeals to a tiny audience. Let Mark Waid and Barry Kitson do something set in the modern day. Let them do something big. Don't have them filling in the gaps between panel 6 and 7 of this comic. The WWE... Then, Now, Forever, #1 came out. It's the new WWE comic from Boom. Other people have done WWE comics. This is really the first one that uses stuff that happens on the show. So there were a few stories. The main story was what went on behind the scenes to cause the Shield to break up. It was competent, but it really... Joe, do you remember the aftermags like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Inside Wrestling?
Oh, yeah.
Where you'd pick them up and you'd read, and it would be these stories of what caused a feud, or, and they were all made up by the people working on the magazines. They had pictures, they'd have some match results, but the main stories, they were all made up. This felt a lot like that, where it's, okay, we're gonna tell you what's happening in the stuff that they're not showing on TV. And again, the Shield broke up almost 2 years ago.
Filling in the holes, the gaps.
I can't imagine the audience they're aiming this at is going to pick it up, especially when WWE doesn't give a shit about their history. They ignore stuff. I can't imagine somebody going, oh, cool, they're going to tell the backstory of why the Shield broke up. Now, maybe this is just a preview to let you know what's happening, but again, if they're going to be delving into the past, it's not going to work. It was decent enough. It cost too much, and the other stories were kind of, introducing you to characters, and then they had this really goofy story with the New Day, and if you like the New Day and you like their goofiness, you might like it. And then the last book I got has been advertised on Facebook for at least 2 goddamn years. Joe, I bought a digital copy of Geek Girl #1.
Ooh.
And how long have we been hearing about this thing?
I don't know. I have the 0 issues.
But I read the first issue.
How'd you get it?
It's digital. He released it digitally,
oh, okay.
And I think it's only in print in the UK.
Oh, okay.
But I read it, and there are things I like about it. I really like the art. I think the art is really, really well done. It's kind of that mid 2000s Good Girl art, where it's not overly, not overly imaged, where the boobs are bigger than their heads, and every pose they're showing their boobs and their butt at the same time, so their backs are obviously broken. It was nice, well done superhero art, but parts of the story were just goofy for me. She got her powers by putting on a pair of glasses. Everybody calls her Geek Girl, but she's not really a geek. And there are all sorts of superheroes around, which I don't mind that. I thought that was okay. But overall, just the story felt like one step below ready to go. It really felt like an editor needed to go over it to kind of clean up some stuff, give some characters a little more motivation, and make it seem a little more cohesive and professional. If they keep going on, the art is, like I said, I really like the art. I thought the art was very well done. The story needs some work, so hopefully we get a little more where it's not, well, we call her Geek Girl because she wears glasses. And the whole time she's going, but I'm not a geek. I'm not a geek. I'm not a geek. I'm not a geek. Kind of defeats the purpose of calling her Geek Girl.
Well, you'll find out on December 7th because that's when #2 is up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I know the guy's been pushing it on Facebook for years, literally years. So when he said, it's out, it's available, I went, oh, okay, I'll buy a digital copy just to see what it's like. And I'm not going to say, we do the review of buy, borrow, or ignore. Right now it's kind of a borrow. WWE Preview was a borrow. Avengers 1.1, it's a buy for if you're a huge fan of Wade, Kitson, and early Marvel, and Thanos is a definite buy. So those are the things I'm geeking on this week. My box day, the box is packed. They haven't given, they've got the shipping date but no shipping number, so that means they've packed it and they're waiting. But I took a look. This is my biggest box day in ages. It's Master of Kung Fu Omnibus Volume 2, Deadly Hands of Kung Fu Omnibus, the Jerusalem novel by Alan Moore, 4 of the Warren hardcovers. Oh.
By the way, if you're a guy like me who wants a physical copy, you can get Geek Girl via eBay UK, not regular eBay. So, and he's got plenty available.
Well, believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blabber on about TV shows, candy, and comic books for over an hour and a half.
Woohoo!
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Let us not forget the true meaning of Christmas, the birth of Brian. Hit my music!
We done, bitches!